And we are located in New York City, and we are all about accelerated learning in terms of teaching people tips, tricks, and work hacks to be more productive, to be more innovative, and to better embrace change. And especially in a time right now of reset, I really want to give you all things that you can personally as well as professionally be more effective, productive, and frankly, more fulfilled at work. So how do we get better engaged? How do we get collaborating versus just zoomed out and meeting? So that's what we're talking about today. Heidi, I'm just going to dive right in and get us going. I got the thumbs up. That's good.
Yeah, I forgot to introduce you, so we're just going to keep going.
Let's just flow right into it. We got this. So I do recommend for everybody here, Heidi and I talked about this beforehand, have a pen and paper handy, because I'm going to give you over 20 tips and tricks that you can walk away with and use immediately. Your job is to commit to trying one of them. That's it. Not all of them, one of them. So I'm going to share my screen and let's get started here. One sec for everybody. All right, Heidi, give me that thumbs up if you can see my screen. All right, fantastic. Hey, to everybody here in the chat, do me a favor if you are on, could you type in the chat on a scale of 1 to 10, how you think your organization, or frankly, the team that you operate in every day does in terms of collaborating? Scale of 1 to 10, 1, your group or team sucks at it. 10, you're amazing and off the charts and you should be teaching this session. 1 to 10, how well does your group that you operate in every day do with collaborating? Well, I see a bunch of responses. We've got 7s, 8s. Well, everybody here seems to be doing a pretty good job, which of course makes me wonder then, well, if you're doing a great job, are you here just for better tips? Or could you really do better and you're not really an 8 or 9? So, and I see some people here that went typed into the chat, it depends on the project. I want to make it so it's consistent. So here's what I'm going to talk about with you today, and we're going to cover 4 key areas. The first is, how do we normalize being virtual? Because that's the first step. The second is, how do you set norms? Most of us think we know how we're supposed to operate in the virtual or remote world, which is not going to go away. Even when we find a vaccine for COVID, things will still be hybrid. So remote exclusively probably isn't going to be people's way of working, but it's going to be a large portion of it going forward. So let's set those new norms. The third thing is, we want to be able to use tools and technology together to engage. Technology is not a strategy. It's a platform, and we want to make sure that we treat it like that. Last thing, number 4, that we're going to talk about is how you can avoid collaboration overload and embrace what I call a mini mindset. So the goal of this is to get you back time for work that matters, not to do tasks, but to do strategic things that leverage our collective mindset, because that's what collaboration is about, to get more brain power, to get better solutions, not just have more time together. So let me dive in with the first one. I think we need to normalize being virtual. And I'm going to advocate strongly for this in different ways, because what's happened with us being virtual is we've lost the informality of those hallway conversations, the ability just to catch up, the ability to stop by someone and say hi, the water cooler talk. If you want that now, it has to be scheduled. Or if you only have 30 minutes on a Zoom call with people, it eats up a lot of the time and then people feel under pressure. How can we make sure that we normalize being virtual to make it human? One of the things that I want to advocate is using video. I know in a lot of corporations, you do that all the time, but in a lot of companies, they don't. And they allow people to be half the time off video, half the time on. Now, if you were thinking about what it was like pre-COVID, that's the equivalent of walking into a conference room and having half the people under the table and half the people sitting at it. We want everybody at the table. And the reason we want to use video is we know that people are 27% more engaged in collaborating actively versus passively if we use video. Here's why, and this is interesting in terms of social science. Audio is passive, video is active. And we know from some social psychology studies, particularly one that was done in Chicago, that people are better behaved and more participative when they can see themselves. Half the time when we're on video, we're looking at everyone else. The other half of the time, we're looking at ourselves. How do we look? Are we behaving? Are we part of the social norm? When they did a study in Chicago, they did it with bars and how people behaved in bars and treated bartenders. And what they discovered were in the bars where there were large mirrors behind the bartenders, right in the back of the bar, patrons in those bars were better behaved, more polite, more patient, ordered more, and importantly, less drunk than those bars that didn't have the mirrors. And the reason why is they could see themselves and how they were acting and had better behavior. So if you have video, it's better for tough conversations, it's better for participation, and it's better to get everybody activated. The other reason to use video is we want to be able to set norms. One of the problems that we've had is people have had to open up their homes and their personal lives. They weren't set up for a home office necessarily, and now they have to. That's a new norm you're going to need to have. So how do we normalize being virtual? I was talking to one of my friends, Dean, at Fidelity. He's a senior guy there, and he's a great leader. And he actually took on his back shelf, he put hundreds of objects that were important to him and just placed them there. And what he noticed were people would start to look and say behind him, hey, Dean, what's that photograph? Or what's that medal? Hey, where's that picture from? And it started to have that human conversation that we don't have anymore. So if you can have everybody do a virtual field trip of their office, he even did a garden walk with people. He tried to make it interesting so people could have that informality and frankly, build trust. We had trust when we were physically together, and now that everyone's virtual, that's what's missing. We're working to rebuild trust again. You can do that by having interesting backgrounds one day. We know leaders that have sent people interesting swag to all wear on one day. Shake it up, do something simple, but build that bond of trust together. Trust eliminates fear and creates engagement. Okay, let's keep going. Now that we've made being virtual and on video important, I want to talk more about norms. I think people say that they know how we're supposed to behave, but do they? You as leaders or individuals on a team need to be able to agree of what are we going to do and how are we going to act when we're virtual. Here are some things I'd like you to consider. First of all, when do you use email versus meetings versus the phone? I would bet you 90% of you use Zoom meetings. We've forgotten the default then is email. Very few people pick up the phone. A great place for you to have formal structured meetings is on Zoom. A place for you to have information is email. A place to have casual, quick conversations and keep that informal bond going is on the phone. Are you doing a good job of using all three? Next, I think what would be helpful for people is this tip. Rather than having an agenda where you just say what the subject is, instead, put in the subject line the question that you're trying to solve. What this does is questions hijack the brain and they get people focused up on what the solution is that they need to create. So rather than saying what the subject is, pose the question that we're all trying to come to a conclusion on. It's very powerful and it activates the brain to get elaborating and be creative problem solving. Next, start setting 30 minutes as the default. I'm going to talk a little bit later that 30 is the new 60 and 15 is the new 30. We've become very tactical, and in the remote world, when we are at home, it's really more for thinking, and we are at work, it's going to be a lot more for strategy and doing a lot of creative problem solving. Use your time wisely and set 30 minutes as your default or some default that's not 60 minutes. Next, I think it's really helpful at the end of your Zoom meetings or when you're online, not to talk about next steps. Next steps have become the background noise of conversations that people just blow off and don't even think about anymore. Wrap up your meetings with what decisions you made, not next steps. So we all have alignment. The next thing I want to talk about, number 3 on our list today, is how to use tools and tech so you can interact creatively. My main point here is that tech is not a strategy. We think that tech is a strategy. We have Zoom, therefore we have norms. You do not have norms. We want to be able to keep people engaged, and it's how you use the tech that matters. Take a look at this chart. This is the normal arc that happens in a meeting, right? Your attention span over time. And notice that in the beginning, it's very high interest. We're pumped, This actually may be a great meeting. And quickly it falls off the cliff because we've, well, fallen into our pattern of the same old droning on. And only at the end of the meeting do people get back engaged because it's almost done. What you want for a great meeting is this. You want to have constant resets every 5 minutes that engage people, move it along like you're a tour guide, and have technology that engages versus just talking at. Remember, emails are information, meetings are for action and decisions. So the goal of this isn't for you to entertain people every 5 minutes, but to engage them every 5 minutes. If you want a better meeting and have them collaborating, you need to start using better tools. Let me show you what I mean. If you want people to participate, try one of these a week. Remember, the goal is one, not all. If you want to get people driving towards decisions, don't just say who agrees. Use hand raising for agreements to start a discussion, emoticons for feelings around a decision, chatting for ideas. Chat is especially powerful to get people's input if there are introverts in the room or people that feel from a diversity perspective less likely to speak up. Use polling to drive decisions for fun. And one of my favorite pieces of technology called Mentimeter.com allows people to do word clouds, chat bubbles, and all kinds of things using whatever platform you use for meetings. Awesome tool, check it out. If you want to personalize things, right? How do you personalize a meeting versus taking up 20 minutes of your 30-minute meeting about how everyone's weekend was? Set up virtual cuppas with people and bring your favorite mug. I do that all the time with clients and prospects. A 15-minute virtual cup of coffee. It's very non-committal, it's fast, it's casual, and it's nice. Have a non-working lunch with your team, not a working lunch. Schedule what I know in a lot of future of education conferences I go to, schedule a 15-minute brain date with someone. If you want to learn and stretch your mind on a topic, pick up the phone, set up a Zoom date. It could be with an author, with a thought leader, with someone who's written an article, with someone, a colleague not in your division that you could really get new juice from. The other tip I have for you is injecting 15-minute icebreakers or kind of skill builders, but put them at the end of your meetings, right? Get all your stuff out of the way and then end it on a good note. Too many of our meetings are kind of wah, 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 because, well, we ended on a down note. Put your skill builder or your icebreaker at the end. Finally, we need to activate our meetings, right? Meetings are not like this. It's not to talk at you, it's to interact with you. And so we do a lot of things like have guest appearances from the outside and do something what we call knowledge drops. Have them come for 5-10 minutes, do a Q&A, learn something new. Use your breakout rooms, right? Get small group talk, especially important from a diversity perspective and for introverts. And then finally, run a challenge with people for problem solving. The reason I think that's important is rather than just having people come to a meeting to answer a question, give them a structure on how to do it, right? How do we solve this problem versus just discussion? You need to be a very skilled facilitator, and that's why we run a training company, is because we know you can't just ask people to solve a problem. You've got to give them a technique or framework how. Here's my suggestion. It's easy, and I'm actually going to offer to give you this tool after. Run a session called Impossible to Possible. Got a problem? Have people write down all the impossibles individually around that problem, all the things that will never happen, all the reasons why people will never buy our product, all the reasons why this, I don't know, this meeting will never be better. And then they have to take their impossibles, email or swap them online with a person in the room or a team. You can do this in breakout rooms. And you have to make the impossibles you inherited possible. The reason why this is important is because we are better at solving other people's problems than our own. You think you're in a groove, usually you're in a rut. Get out of it by giving away your problems and having someone else step outside and give you some new juice. Final thing, number 4, and we only have a couple minutes left. I want you to avoid collaboration overload. Avoid collaboration overload. How can you do less but get more out of it? Here are my suggestions, and these are awesome. We work a lot with Cleveland Clinic, and they do something called mini meetings. It's not about less meetings. It can be less time spent in better meetings. So rather than having one 2-hour meeting a week, They cut everything down into daily 5-minute sprints. 30 is the new 60. You've got to rethink time. When people are virtual, that's usually tactical, but when we get together live or hybrid, that's where a lot of the more strategic and innovative time can happen. Do a meeting audit. Audit all your meetings. We did this with Sprint. We had them write down every meeting they have, from daily to weekly to episodic, with the goal of getting rid of 50% of them. 50. Guess what? They got rid of 18% of them. That was 2 hours a week back to every single person on the team. We just let zombie meetings happen, and it has to stop. Last tips, set meeting only days. We seem to have this rut where we think we have to have meeting free days. Why? Why don't we reverse that and have, it's not about meeting free days, 1 day a week. It's only having 1 day a week for meetings, so we have more time to think. A couple of good tips that we do at FutureThink, because we are experts in productivity and change, having drop-off meetings. Think of your meeting like a reverse funnel, where the most people that need to be involved in an agenda are at the top, and as you get to more specific topics, they drop off like a carpool. The final thing, and how I know in my company and other clients we've worked with, that we are doing a good job of collaborating, is when you know it's great that you've been uninvited to something. Your meeting, your time is too important to be at this meeting. It is not needed. Thank you so much. You're uninvited. People in my company love that. We're out of time. I hope that was a lot of tips for you. I think they're helpful. I hope you thought they were helpful. Let me give you one last thing. This is what we covered. We normalize being virtual. We set norms, we use tools, and we avoid collaboration overload. Let's keep this going. We do this stuff all the time, these work hack webinars with people to really tackle their problems and get people juiced up and productive in no time at all. If you want to know more about them, write us at innovate@futurethink.com. And if you write us about the webinars, I'm happy to give you our Impossible to Possible tool that I referenced today to help you have better collaboration and solve your problems quickly.
Oh, Lisa, I want to throw in here, you have the all the great ideas of the, I like not thinking of it as meeting free days, but thinking of it as meeting plus days.
Right? It's good.
In client services who are, you know, at the whim of when a client can meet. How in the world do you manage these things?
How do you manage people from the outside when they want to meet?
Because your time is no longer your time when you're in services of any kind, right?
Yeah, no, I understand that. I mean, I agree, running a service business, I actually like to position it to people that, you know, time is the only it's the only non-renewable resource we have. So I want to help you use it as most effective as possible. We are all time starved, right? We all have ADD. So unless there's a good reason for it to be 60, let's make it 30. Let's make it 15. And if we find that we run out of time consistently, then we'll bring it back. Nothing has to be permanent. We can pilot it that way. And let's see if it's effective. I think it's about changing the length and changing the frequency as a suggestion of you want to use their time, a non-renewable resource, more valuably.
I like it. Meetings are like a house. The bigger the house you buy, the more crap you put in it. So the longer your meeting is,
true.
the more you will fill it, right?
Right? It helps you the idea is to focus up, right? And it's not about, we're on a treadmill right now with meetings. Like that's why we're so zoomed out. But we have to think differently. Different channels mean different things. So if we're going to do Zoom, let's make it effective, right? But then let's use the other mediums that we have, email, live, and phone, for other things that are also important.
Yeah, agreed.
Cool.
Thank you. I will pop off spotlight. Anyone else have questions?
It was cool. Hey, we got a lot of questions. I've got one here about Cleveland Clinic I'll do, but yes, I have a feeling, is this being recorded? That's one of the questions that keeps coming through. Yep. Yes. Okay, great. Yeah. So you'll get these tips. Remember, my suggestion to everybody here is, I personally think these tips are amazing because they're from my amazing clients. They work. I know it. They are awesome. Don't do them all. Do not. You are only allowed to do one to get started, because habits happen when you break them down into small parts. The reason we are handicapped not to change is because we try to do too much. There was someone who said, hey, Gigi, you asked about Cleveland Clinic. Yeah, so I had done some work with my first book. I have two books. One's Kill the Company and the other one's called Why Simple Wins. And it's all about innovation, change, and simplification. And when I talked to Cleveland Clinic, I was working with one of their agile groups. And what I found was, you know, they had so many tech requests, right, for change and updates to their technology. within healthcare that they were overwhelmed. And the first reaction everyone has is to eliminate something. We have too many meetings, let's just get rid of them all. We become extreme. Well, communication and collaboration, especially on tech projects and agile teams, is important. So the idea wasn't to get rid of them all, it was to find a cadence and the right amount of time where we could get enough done. And so rather than waiting too long, 2 hours once a week, why not break it down into mini 5-minute meetings once or twice a day with the right people at the right time? So breaking it into parts and getting the right people for shorter amounts of time. Do we have time for one more? Let's see. Okay. Do we think that we will continue meeting on video more than in person after we are past COVID? Here's my feeling about that. The answer is, as a futurist, I believe that it's going to be hybrid. There's a couple reasons why. First of all, I think it's really good for people's, quote, work-life balance. The line is blurred. I think a lot of people work longer, but will eventually even out and put boundaries down. Right? We're in a big time of flux. But I think people now have seen that they can work remotely and it gives them tremendous freedom. So it's like a work-life benefit. And you are going to hear, and already are hearing, employers positioning it that way. The real reason why it's going to stay is because the vast amounts of money that are going to be saved by organizations when they drop their real estate costs. Many of them have long-term leases that they will not get out of for some time, but the large majority of them, this is for better or worse, are going to be shifting those costs of an office space to workers individually. So I believe that it's going to be a hybrid for a while. To be frank, we work with a lot of very, very large companies. It's, your Googles, your Novartises, your US Navy. And they've been doing this for a long time, right? Novartis, working remotely is not new to a multinational company, but the intensity and the pervasiveness of it is. So I think for those that are not used to it, that's what's been hard. But this isn't entirely new. I just think that it's going to be the cost, and the expectation is going to be shifting more to the workers because it's a tremendous cost savings.
I like Scott's question. What do you think will happen to all the real estate once the leases end? I think there will be multi-story roller rinks.
So it's interesting. I do a lot on the future of cities, and so does my, interestingly, my son, who is also an innovator. He does a lot on the future of cities. And there's a lot of discussion that's going to be happening with that. Those can become new shared spaces. I mean, the whole design around what an office is. So for example, I think that home is going to be more for heads down work or tactical work. But when we come back together, I think they could be redesigned as innovation hubs and places that are really meant for thinking, collaboration in ways that we've always dreamed about versus, conference rooms.
Okay, it's time for me to cut this wonderful conversation off.
We gotta go.
Do it. You were awesome, Lisa. Thank you.
Thanks,
so
Heidi.
Much.
Yeah, thank you.
Everybody, we're gonna give Lisa our
goodbye.
talk. You were great.
So I took notes in the ebook session. So those of you that were here and paying attention,